You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Welcome back to the Black to Business Podcast. I am so happy to have you back. If you're new here, I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and in today's solo episode, I want to do a quick dive into a topic I know hits close to home for many, and that's having resilience and perseverance in business. Trust me, I have been there, and I know firsthand how important it is to keep pushing through those obstacles that try to hold us back in this entrepreneurial journey. And it's not easy, and it does take resiliency and perseverance to thrive and overcome those obstacles. But before I dive in, I want to give you some context and some definitions to the topic. So first, let me break down what resilience and perseverance actually means. And I looked this up. Of course, I have a general idea, and you might as well, but I wanted to make it plain for you. It's so funny because someone once asked me in a workshop I was recently teaching, they asked me if I was a teacher in my past life. And I'm like, no, but I know what it's like to want things broken down. And I'm really intentional about that on the Black to Business podcast because you can't assume that every listener knows everything. So that's why we like to break it down over here. So anywho, I found that resilience is about the mindset and the thought process to overcome challenges and maintain focus. So actually being able to recover from and adjust easily to misfortune or change. And then you have perseverance, which is the act of keeping going and going until you get there. And another way to put this is it's the continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, despite failure, or opposition. Make sense? So as Black entrepreneurs, we face unique challenges on our journey to success, but I believe that with the right mindset and strategies, we can overcome any obstacle that comes our way. As Black people, we are known to be resilient. So today I'm going to share with you what some of those challenges are, how to overcome those challenges, and some helpful resources for support. Sounds good? Okay, great. So let's begin by discussing some of the challenges that we as Black entrepreneurs may encounter. One significant challenge is the lack of access to funding. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Many of us struggle to secure the necessary capital to even start a business, let alone grow one. And sometimes you can have all the training, you can have all the roadmaps, the courses, and the blueprints in the world, but if you don't have the funding, it can be quite difficult to reach your full potential. And the reality is that traditional sources of funding aren't always readily available to us. So as a result, these challenges have a significant impact on our businesses. What do you do when you don't have the money? As they say, it takes money to run a business. Limited funding means limited resources for marketing, hiring, or expanding our ventures. And don't get me started on the discrimination and bias we often come across. Sadly, racism and bias are still prevalent in many industries and communities. As Black entrepreneurs, we may face systemic racism, unconscious bias, and stereotypes that hinder our progress. Making it plain for you, discrimination can lead to missed opportunities, closed doors, and a sense of exclusion. And what this looks like is making it harder to secure partnerships, customers, or even fair treatment in the business world. Now, here I want to talk about what I mentioned in the beginning of the episode is that I believe that with the right mindset, we can do a lot of things. If you've listened to some of my previous episodes, a lot of that comes from setting those goals and then also being intentional with those goals. So when you're setting goals, one of the things I like to do is I like to be realistic about some of the obstacles that you might face or I might face. So for example, if you know that you might face all of those things that sometimes we cannot control, what happens then? Will you just give up? So in this sense, I do say take those things into consideration, and that is a part of that mindset work. So I want to make that clear. I know I mentioned in the beginning, with the right mindset, you can do all things. but there are some things that are outside of your control. So with that being said, you have the challenges to secure capital and discrimination. And I also want to talk about the fact that imposter syndrome. This one runs deep. So have you ever felt like you are not good enough, like you don't belong in the room? That's imposter syndrome. And it's real and it can mess with our heads big time. As Black entrepreneurs, we may face the pressure of representation, feeling like we have to be twice as good just to be good enough. I mean, you hear it all the time. But here's the truth. We are good enough and we deserve every ounce of success that comes our way. We have to remind ourselves of our accomplishments, celebrate our strengths, and silence that inner critic that tries to undermine our greatness. And if you have to talk to yourself aloud, then do it. I want to talk about also the effects of imposter syndrome can erode our confidence and prevent us from seizing opportunities or showcasing our unique talents and abilities. Have you ever thought, seeing something, you're like, I can do that, but that imposter syndrome is what's holding you back. And let me tell you, this can plague even the most talented and driven individuals. There are so many talented people that you would not even know because they're dealing with that imposter syndrome. So again, practice silencing that inner critic. And if that means talking to yourself aloud, then do it. Now that we've acknowledged the challenges, let's dive into some of the practical tips for building that mental strength that we need. So first things first is you want to take care of yourself. Resilience and perseverance starts from within. Being an entrepreneur is a tough road, and it's easy to get caught up in the grind and neglect our well-being. But here's the thing. We can't pour from an empty cup. So it's crucial to prioritize self-care and well-being. And whether that's a meditation session, hitting the gym, or chilling with your loved ones, you want to make sure that you are feeding your mind, your body, and your soul. So we need that balance to stay resilient and focused. And this also looks like setting those boundaries to make time to do these things. Sometimes you have to say no to something to say yes to yourself. So don't feel bad about prioritizing your well-being because in order for you to show up for others, you have to be able to show up for yourself. And most importantly, let's not forget about our squad and our tribe. So surrounding yourselves with people who uplift us and understand our hustle and our passion for what we do is also crucial. When we have a supportive network of like-minded individuals, this provides encouragement, guidance, and accountability on our journeys. So even in last week's episode with Randy Hazelton, his parting advice was to make sure that you're mindful of who you surround yourself with. So now let's talk about staying focused and motivated, because trust me, I know it's easy to get distracted or feel overwhelmed. But here's the trick. You have to break it down. You got to take those big goals and slice them up into bite-sized tasks. That way you're making progress and celebrating those victories along the way. And when you hit those bumps in the road, because trust me, you will, don't sweat it. You have to embrace that growth mindset and learn from your mistakes, adjust the course, and keep pushing forward. Remember, every successful entrepreneur has stumbled, but they didn't let it define them. So, stay focused, stay motivated. Now let's tackle setbacks head on. So as the saying goes, there is no such thing as failure. It's just a lesson. So instead of beating ourselves up, let's flip the script and see it as an opportunity for growth. You got this. And I want you to seek some feedback and pivot when you need to and come back stronger than ever. That's one of the things that a lot of guests talk about on this podcast is the need to pivot. And I think it goes in alignment with failing fast. So it's not always about giving up. It's about maybe that didn't work, but let's pivot. Let's tweak it a little bit. So embrace that resilience because that's going and going, which is being able to recover from and adjust easily to misfortune or change, because that's what's going to set you apart. Now, before we wrap this up, as promised, I also want to give you some resources. So first, I want you to check out a couple of past Black to Business podcast episodes, like episode number 9 with Steve Canal. That is an oldie, but it's a good one. And he dives into how to develop a winning mindset. And also episode number 24 with Dr. Arabia Mollett on self-care and entrepreneurship. And episode number 99, a more recent one, managing your mental health with Lamar Title. And some additional resources are places like the National Black Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Administration, the Minority Business Development Agency, and your local entrepreneurship center. And as a guest on the show has mentioned previously, even your local library has a lot of resources. So some people may not have like a local dedicated entrepreneurship center, but check out what your local library has because they have some goodies. And all of these places, they have either where you can have a mentor, you can find out where you can do some networking events or other funding opportunities that might be low risk. So don't forget to check these out. And also don't forget the power of the online world. I really, really want to give this because there are a lot of people who are in just locations that are not surrounded by places where they're doing a lot of entrepreneurial events. Or there are a lot of people who want to be mentors or have those services where they want to offer mentorship to others. So using those online spaces as a place to go. So joining those groups that cater to our needs. I really want to encourage you to join one that caters to specific needs of Black entrepreneurs because that's where you can go to find and build your community. All right, fam, that is it for today's episode. It's a shorty, but I hope that you enjoyed and got some valuable insights. And remember, resilience and perseverance are in our DNA. Keep grinding, keep believing, and keep pushing past those obstacles. And you can check out all the resources that I mentioned here in this episode by visiting blacktobusiness.com/148. Thank you so much for listening, and I will chat with you next week, same time, same place.